Are you tired of living with constant pain, fatigue, and the endless cycle of medications that never seem to bring real relief? What if I told you there's a way to reverse autoimmune disease naturally without relying on drugs or their side effects? Welcome to Holistic Hope, the vegan friendly podcast show that uncovers the secrets to health that you've been searching for. I'm your host, Amanda Cuda. Welcome to the Holistic Hope podcast show. In today's episode, we're diving deep into how diet and lifestyle can transform your health from the inside out. Whether you're dealing with an autoimmune condition or supporting somebody who is, this conversation could be a game changer. My guest today has personally walked this path, reversing his own health challenges, and now helps others to do the same. He's the author of Create Health, Reverse Autoimmune Disease Without Drugs or Their Side Effects, and he's here to share his experience with us. Please welcome Dr. Benjamin Benulis. Hi, Ben.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Glad we could do this.
Yeah, so awesome to have you here. I met you, I think it was either the start of 2020. I think you used to do live talks at a favorite vegetarian cafe here in the Valley in Phoenix, which no longer exist. But when I first saw that you were doing an event, I was personally super excited because I had just been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, a inactive thyroid autoimmune condition for people who don't know what that is. And you gave me hope. You gave me hope
Awesome.
that I didn't have to go on medication. So, I mentioned in the introduction that you've walked this path before. Can you let our listeners know a little bit of how you got here?
Sure. And thanks for mentioning that because I feel like there's a lot of people, whether it's in the holistic, natural, alternative, or call it space, who are helping people, or they're in the traditional medical space, they don't necessarily have any firsthand experience dealing with the conditions that they're trying to help people with. And as someone who had going through that experience with doctors and people that didn't was really frustrating. And so so just to dial the clock back to about 2009, 2010 was really when my health journey began of like noticing that I really wasn't feeling well. And it started off, pretty innocently with just like, okay, food I'm eating doesn't like really agree with me. Energy's feeling off, feeling tired a lot. And then over the course of about 6 months to a year, that devolved to like eczema all over my hands. Every meal I'm eating, is blowing up my stomach. Uh, barely any energy to get through the day. Having to like knock back energy drinks just to get through work. Sleeping most of the weekend. Muscle sore all the time. Chronic pain. Brain fog. Not thinking clearly. And I had just become this shell of my former self. And
Mm.
and so really not knowing any better or any different, I started went to book a visit with my primary care doctor to figure out what was wrong, and was rather underwhelmed at how that went. I really thought, okay, I'm gonna show up, you know, at this doctor's office with problems A, B, and C, and they're gonna, you know, diagnose me with X, Y, and Z, and then they're gonna give me drugs for X, Y, and Z, and then I'll everything will be fixed. And
Mm.
if you're watching, you probably know that it doesn't always work out that way. And it was discouraging, right? Because it was like, well, okay, you got a skin issue. We're going to send you to the dermatologist. Okay, you got this, you know, fatigue issue. We're going to send you to the hematologist. You got this digestive issue. We're going to send you to the gastroenterologist. And at first I was like, oh, okay, this is great. Like I'm seeing the specialists, and they're going to help me. And then I would go to the specialist and they would kind of, maybe they'd run their blood work and say, well, we ran your blood work and guess what? Thyroid's normal. This is normal. All the tests we ran are normal. So everything's okay.
Mm.
Um, or they would give me some kind of drug to just kind of push me off. Like, okay, just take this, just take over the counter, stuff for your stomach and you should be fine. Right. And
Yeah.
it didn't really do much, or I was already I'm like, well, what else can I do? And I really wasn't getting anywhere. I was getting really the runaround of like, well, we don't know. We'll send you off to this subspecialist. And you're thinking, oh, I'm going to see the subspecialist. Like this now, we
Yeah.
got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah, like they're
You
gonna do something
realize, like,
different.
and so, it's funny. I was talking about this with someone you should definitely interview for the podcast, a mentor of mine, Dr. Rick Dina. And
Mm,
he was talking about how, just to go off on a tangent here, in medicine, we have these specialties, whether it's gastroenterology for the stomach, dermatology for the skin, right? And then we have subspecialists, right? Like the subspecialist of the neurologist who only works on this one variety of multiple sclerosis, right? And
mm,
so you get these people that know a lot about something very little. Okay. Now, if you extrapolate that out, eventually medicine will get to the point where you have these people that know everything about nothing.
right.
But my problem was that I had a systemic condition, right? And, all these specialists are only looking at one piece of the pie and going, I don't really think, and, and so after about, 6 to 8 months of this process of going to doctors and getting nowhere, I'm like, man, these guys can't figure me out. And at the time, I just kind of thought I was like a special case, like I was the
Mm,
medical mystery that they couldn't solve, you know?
yeah.
And so I just started doing my own research. Ooh, that's a bad. You can't be doing your own research. But like when the doctors literally can't help you, you're like, okay, I got to figure this out, right? And here's the thing: I had a pretty strong science background. I was an engineer, but funny enough, in high school, I'd been part of like a biotechnology pilot program, so I actually knew a lot about a fair amount about like biochemistry, cell biology, molecular. Like I knew enough to be like, okay,
Mm,
maybe I can figure something out because I got this weird thing, these weird diseases going on that they can't figure out. So I'm just going to do my own research. And that's when I kind of stumbled into, natural health things. I was like, man, it's like, you're having all these stomach aches all the time. Could it be what you're eating is causing that? And I thought, oh, I guess I can't rule that out, you know,
yeah.
because I didn't eat very well, but I thought I was getting away with it because I was always thin. I never got fat. So I thought, oh, I have good genes. I can just eat whatever I want. And so I would be the guy at work when they, broke out the pizza or the brownies or whatever. I was the guy who was like getting extra, right? And people were like, that's going to catch up with you. And I always said,
Mm,
nope, I got good genes. But I think they were right. It did catch up with me, just not in the way that, everybody kind of anticipated. So
mm.
that was kind of the beginning of my journey of like just not getting help by the medical system, thinking I was this rare, zebra that had to figure it out himself. Or we can go more into like, how I kind of like stumbled into everything. It was really all by accident, just out of necessity. But that's kind of
Yeah.
where it began.
Yeah, let's go into that because I mean, it's so debilitating. I've been there before, and you and I can sit here and kind of chuckle and laugh now about the start of the journey. But when you're there, and if someone's listening to this podcast episode and they're right in the your start of their journey, trying to work out what's going on, going to these doctors, one after the other, getting tests done, and really being pushed to medication, because that's really what I found straight away was like, let's have that push for medication. For me, I was lucky because my mom, she had Hashimoto's. And, back in the early 90s, they found a nodule. They did surgery. She had half of her thyroid removed. So she was on, and is it Throxin, that medication? It's the same. They call it the same thing in America.
There's levothyroxine and Synthroid, probably one of those.
Yeah, I think it was levothyroxine, that's the
Yeah.
one. And, so I grew up watching my mom having to take this medication and
Mm.
destroy her life. And up until the day she died, she was angry about it. And so when I got the diagnosis, I was straight up going, "No." I already became a health coach through other health issues I had had. And you're watching my father pass away and being suffering from kidney failure and disease. And then we actually healed my mum naturally through her breast cancer journey. So there was no way I was going to settle for having a medication pushed on me. I knew straight up that wasn't my answer. So how did you stumble into it?
Well, like I said, out of necessity. And so, honestly, I was just like, because I would ask my gastroenterologist, like, could there be anything that I'm eating that could affect this?
Mm,
And, and they would straight up tell me to my face, oh no, this isn't, you just have to take this drug or this drug and, um, it like maybe a few years prior to that, I would have just gone along with it. But
mm.
I just reached a point of like, no, that I know you're the doctor and I know you're the authority and I'm supposed to believe everything you say, but like really just doesn't pass the smell test.
Mm.
Like, you have this tube that's going through your body, right? That starts as your mouth and it ends as your rear end, where you poop out of. And that tube, the inside of that tube is inflamed and diseased. Okay.
Yeah.
And you go, why is that tube inflamed and diseased? And the one thing that touches it every day, that passes through it, that touches the inside of the tube every day is the food that you eat. And the doctor, whose job is to like help you with that part of your body, that tube, says, oh no, the one thing that passes through that tube is not the reason why the inside of the tube is diseased and inflamed. Like it's like prima
Yeah.
facie, it is absurd. It is absurd. Right. But of course, he's in the position of authority. He's a medical doctor. He's also done a GI residency. He knows the stuff. Right. But it's like, man, I'm really struggling. Nothing this guy's doing is working. Maybe, just maybe I could look into eating different. Right. Like maybe there's certain foods that are aggravating. But maybe let's just thought experiment. Right. So I
Yeah.
find this other clinic that does food sensitivity testing. And this was the first place I went to that they didn't take my insurance. They had to pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
No. And I was like, oh my God, I got to pay money for like this test, you know? And that was a big deal to me to like put my own money towards my health. Right. But I was going to a system where insurance was paying for everything, but I wasn't getting anything to show for it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pony up I think it was like $300 for a lab test. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I am like dying to know the results of the lab test, right? And usually I did not care, but like, oh, we'll get back to you in a week. 3 days go by. I'm like calling me up. You got my results yet, right? And I'm calling. They're like, no. The physician will call you and blah 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 blah. And finally, the guy calls me on like a Friday afternoon, like 4:00. And he's like, hey, I know that you have been dying for these results and we got them. And so basically he proceeds to tell me that have sensitivities to like a laundry list of foods. Right. And it's everything that's in processed food, soy, corn, wheat, brewer's yeast, dairy, just like the list goes on. Right. And my response to the guy is, okay, well, what are you going to give me for that? Right.
Yeah.
That's the level of consciousness I was at. I was like, okay, you diagnosed me with these diseases, these food sensitivities. Now you provide the remedy, the medication, right? Like that's what I thought this was about. Why would you test for it if you didn't have a solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh, well, there's no pill that you take. You have to cut these out of your diet. And that was like a giant record scratch moment of like, excuse me, sir?
Yeah.
Because this is all that I'm eating. So what am I going to do now? Like gluten-free air sandwiches?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, what? Like I just,
Mm-hmm.
there's not a pill. I just stop eating the foods that are harming. Like I was almost indignant. I was like, where I paid $300 for you to tell me to not eat the food that I like?
Right.
You kidding me, bro? So after I kind of came down off of the frustration of that and, just accepted that he was probably right. Um, I was like, okay, I got to figure out what I need. Okay.
Mhm.
And really my mindset was, okay, I eat mostly microwave food and fast food, right? So how can we make it easy? I'm not going to be learning to cook because, I had to
Mhm.
say, I don't like to do that. I'm an engineer. I'm not a cook. I'm blah, blah, blah. And I was like, how can I make it easy for myself? And I thought, okay, what if an easy thing to make would be smoothies because I use a microwave normally, but a blender is a lot like a microwave where you take the food, you open the door to the device,
Yes.
you put the food
Right.
inside, you close the door, you hit a button, and a minute later, you got your food, right?
Mhm.
It's easy. So I thought, I'll just do smoothies because that's just going to be and that's what I did. I didn't know anything about nutrition or like, you know, plant-based or raw foods or vegan or veg. I was just like, I think these are good for you. This will be easy to do. And that's how I got started. And I was just, okay, what do I got in the fridge? Throw it in there. I don't even care. Knock it back. Or it tastes all right. Okay. Oh, this one tasted good. Cool. I'll do the recipe again. And that's how I got started. And then literally it was one day I was like, I'm feeling better doing these. These are like not
Mhm.
blowing up my stomach. My stomach's been feeling good, except when I go and have pizza, inevitably like, you know, have other stuff. But I need more variety. I'm gonna look up some recipes on YouTube. This is like
Yeah.
2010, you know? And I'm like, okay, let's type smoothie recipes into YouTube. And I found a guy who's now like, one of my greatest teachers, greatest mentors. It's a guy named Dan McDonald. It's called him the Life Regenerator on YouTube. I think just his channel got taken down, and I think he just started a new one.
Mm.
And he was making smoothies like in his outside of his RV. He lived in an RV in the woods, and he was making them like in the woods, like with a table in front of the RV, and like now we're gonna put the mangoes and the bananas and I'm like, and I was just like, okay, this is cool. And that was kind of my introduction. But then this guy really, he would make the recipes and all that, but then he would talk this really crazy hippie talk about like how, the medical people just want to cut your organs out and like, it's all a scam and medication's a scam. And what you really got to do is eat like this. And I was just like, okay,
Mhm.
hippie guy, like just make the smoothie and shut up. 'Cause I don't want to listen.
Yeah. I just want the recipe.
Yeah. But I kept watching, right? And it was like, I would laugh at it and be like, this guy's such a goofball. But I kept watching the videos and pretty soon, and I kept making the smoothies and I bought a juicer and then I started doing that and I was feeling better and I kept watching and it sooner or later I was like, this guy might actually be onto something, you know?
Mhm.
Like all those doctors couldn't help me and I've been feeling way better than doing this than anything else, right? And then that was kind of like when the rabbit hole really began of like, okay, then I just started finding like other people, started reading, like finding books to read on nutrition and like, and just dilating in it further. And it became like, I was like literally obsessive about it for a while, like to the point where I was
Yeah.
telling everybody I know, like, you got to make these smoothies, the fruits and the vegetables we've been lied to. It's all a scam. You got to eat this way. And like, people were like, dude, you got to just tone down. I don't care. What did you get all into nutrition then?
Right.
You know? But I felt so good. I just became like obnoxiously evangelical about it.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's funny when you do go down that rabbit hole and you do start to feel good because I know I scared a lot of people off at the start when I'm like, "Oh my god, just do this thing. You'll feel so much better." And apparently not everybody wants to feel that way. That was a new concept for me as well.
Yeah.
So you started having the smoothies, you got the juicer. I love juicing. I've got sitting here on my desk right now, I have a green juice I made up just before
Oh,
we started
nice.
our recording because that's what I love to drink in my afternoons. It helps cut out any sweet cravings that I might, have while I'm procrastinating working. So that's my go-to little hack for people. So you started doing the juicing, the smoothies, the juicing, you're looking things up on YouTube and you started to feel better. So then where was your transition? So you said you were an engineer
Yeah.
and then but you're also a chiropractor.
Yes.
So what was your transition in that career shift?
That transition was like, I think there was a good about year and a half where I was just like full on, health nut mode of like just mad scientist about it. I was still working my job.
Mhm.
What's funny is I had gone from like, like really struggling at my job and being told like, if you don't get it together, you're going to fail your performance review and get fired, to like
Mm,
being like the top performer in my group. My mental clarity
wow.
was so good. I could finish my work by like 2:30 or 3. And then I would
Yeah.
just be like sitting at my desk, like time to kill. And so I started just like going for walks in nature.
Mhm.
Because I kind of, where I was in Austin, Texas, and I was kind of down by all this system of like creeks, and I could go for a walk by them,
Oh,
and
nice.
um, and I would get my job done, and I would show back up at like 4:45, and like, okay, time to close out the workday, guys. Right? And but nobody really complained because I was getting all my work done, right?
Yeah.
And they even had somebody like quit, and I took on her job, and like I was just so mentally clear, like took it on. It was, oh, they're
Mhm.
gonna have such a hard time doing Lauren's job. I was like, so it, it kind of like I didn't really have the idea, but I I had a lot of time to contemplate,
Mhm.
and I had a lot more mental clarity because I was eating so clean, right?
Yeah.
I began to see through the matrix, so to speak. So to give you an idea, one point, I was in a meeting, okay, and it really gave me this like epiphany of like, you're not in the right place. This is not, should not be doing this work. This is not for you. And what happened was, we had a microchip company, and we developed these
Mhm.
tiny little microchips that go on all kinds of devices. And we had a meeting talking about like, okay, what business have we won? What chips do we need to build for next year so we have enough inventory to sell all the stuff, and like how much money are we going to? We're trying to figure all that out. And this one group came in, this one department. They're like, we just closed this huge deal over in Beijing. We got this chip that that it costs us like 7 cents to manufacture it, and we're going to sell it to this company in Beijing for like $1.05. So we're going to make like 90% profit margin, and
Yeah.
they are going to use it for blood glucose meters. And everyone's like, oh, what's that? And they're like, well, a
Mm.
blood glucose meter is something that you use to measure your blood sugar when you have diabetes. Okay. And here's the thing. Okay. This is going to be a moneymaker because the diabetes market is exploding.
Yeah.
It was like 2012 at the time. They're like, by the year 2020, this could be like a $10 billion market. Like we could all retire off of this. And everyone's
Mm.
like, oh, this is brilliant. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. And they're like high fiving. They're like, and I'm just like watching it like, these people all think they're doing a good thing.
Yeah.
Like they think they're doing a great thing.
Mhm.
But I knew, as you know, and hopefully you watching that, diabetes, or at least type 2 diabetes, is a disease purely caused by diet and can
Mhm.
be reversed with diet.
Yep.
But let's spend billions of dollars on technology to manage the disease, right?
Mhm.
And so I realized if I stuck around, I was going to be part of the problem.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't have that on my conscience. It's like they think they're doing something about it, but really they're just enabling the medical system to like just kind of like squeeze more money out of people without giving them any health.
Mhm.
And so I got to thinking like, man, like what am I going to do? Where am I going to work? And and so I went for a walk that night, and I was just like, what am I going to do with my life? Like this place does not align with my values. It's a great
Yeah.
job, you make great money, great people there. Everyone thinks they're doing a great thing. It's not like anyone was malicious, but I knew it wasn't for me. And I thought, okay, what if I could help people doing what I was doing. And I thought, okay, I but I really don't want to go to like I could be a doctor. I don't want to go to medical school and learn like the drugs and surgery stuff, not just and spend like $500,000 just to not to use it, you know.
Right.
And so I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll be a naturopath. And funny enough, I looked into it and it's like naturopaths aren't licensed in Texas. You can't even practice. Like you can't even like
Oh,
really
wow.
do it. I'm like, oh man, plans are foiled, you know? And then I was reading this book called Fasting Can Save Your Life by
Mm.
oh God, what's his name? But he was one of the old school natural hygiene guys who healed people with like a plant-based diet and fasting. And I was reading about him and he was a chiropractor. And I was like, that's funny. And so I read into it more. It's like, oh, a lot of these fasting centers and these dietary healing centers are run by chiro. I guess I'll just do that.
Yeah.
And to heck with like the chiropractor part. I just want to get people well with food and fasting. And
Hmm.
so I was just like, okay, start looking for chiropractic schools. Found one in LA where the produce is really good and the weather is really good. And like, yeah. And so went on left with the quest to become Dr. Ben.
Wow. Yeah, that it's so great when you have that inspirational moment and you don't want to be part of the problem. When you start to feel so good, you want to be part of the solution and helping everybody else. So you're feeling really good. You went off on your quest to chiropractic school. Then you made your way back to Arizona. Was that straight after you graduated or when did you move here?
No, I graduated in 2016 and my first year I was in like the Bay Area, Northern California. Hated it. Thought I would love it.
Oh, yeah. No, I
And
don't like that area.
yeah, I really it was the opposite. Like I thought I would love it. Turned out it was not for me. And so like a year in, I'm like, how do I get out of here? So
Mhm.
I had a few friends that had moved to the Phoenix area.
Mm.
And it was like, because I didn't want to go back to Texas. I didn't want to go back to other places. I just didn't want to go backwards. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I just came here, kind of got a few connections and just as my mom said, you rub two sticks together and you made it happen. That's literally how I got started.
That's awesome. So now you are very active. So show us your book again. So you wrote a book that we mentioned at the start, Create Health, Reverse Autoimmune Disease. So is this kind of your, because we were talking earlier before we started the recording that, there is a whole level of bio individuality when you're working with people.
Yeah.
Not everybody's the same. Like you can't treat somebody who's had MS for years as opposed to somebody who's just been diagnosed in early stage Hashimoto's. Like they're two completely different just stages of where they're at. So the book itself, is that based more on your journey or is that an overall principle?
Yeah, I mean it's based on my journey. It talks about a lot of like just like the principles of like how health really works and that, the narrative that we're told about basically you're going to fall apart and you need the doctor to fix you and give you medications and chop pieces of your body out to save you. And so we get into like kind of where that model tends to fail people and then
Mhm.
how health really works as far as like your body is, self-organizing, self-healing, self-replenishing as long as you provided the conditions to do so. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so then I lay out like a framework of like, here's a food plan and stuff like that. Um, um, so yeah, that's basically what the book's about. The idea of the book was that if I had a time machine and I could go
Mhm.
back in 2009, 2010, whatever, to my old self who was really struggling and getting nowhere and doctors weren't helping him, be like, hey, buddy, I'm you from the future. Here's a book I wrote. You need to read it. Just do what's in here and it'll save you a lot of time and frustration.
Right.
So that it's meant to be like a handbook for people that have autoimmune disease and want to get well and are starting from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome because we did so much research at the start of my journey and it is endless. And then you're also having to have discernment, decipher through all the information to decide is this right for me? And then really listening to that gut instinct
Yeah.
of some things that I was being told. And I'm like, no, I don't feel that that is right for me personally. And so it's been such a big journey. So then so your transition into kind of talk us through your diet these days. Because the other day I was on Instagram and I saw you post this really cool video of eating a whole bunch, like 20 mangoes or something. And I've seen those mangoes here in store, but coming from Australia, the mangoes look different. And the mangoes I tried here, I'm gonna be honest, they didn't taste very good. And so when I saw you had that variety of mango, I actually went to the store just to purchase a couple and went, actually, I was judging this mango and it was actually the better variety. So what do you do? Like if somebody who is just one of the things I know at the start of an autoimmune journey is you don't even have the energy to talk to people. Like you can be so fatigued. Um, you just don't even know where to start, even just to pick up the phone. Hopefully I'm doing this podcast episode so people can just go into the description now and look up Dr. Ben and give you a call. But, sometimes people just need a little bit more encouragement on where to start. So, how do you, on a day to day, manage your diet?
Sure. I will answer that, but I've got to circle back to something you said because I think it's
Oh,
important. So we talked about the mango. So they're like a late
oh yeah,
season, like September mango called the heat mango, like the best mangoes in the States.
so good.
I
Yeah,
will
I
tell you
agree.
that this was like 2015 when I lived in LA, going to chiropractic
Mhm,
school. I used to shop the wholesale market there, and they
mhm.
would get like imports from all over the world. And I would get bulk deals. I would buy like cases of mangoes at a time. And one day, and this was like in January, when mangoes are in season here, and so the guy, when the host, he's like, "Hey, dude, I got something." And
Oh,
I'm like, "What do you?" It was like a drug deal. He's like, "We got these mangoes from Australia, and
oh,
they're really good." And I'm like, "Okay, what are we talking?" And we open up the case, and they're like, oh, they're glowing. They're like
yeah.
vibrant. I'm like, "Those look like they're good." He's like, "Yeah, we got a case of them off this place. They're kind of going bad. Normally they're $40 a case. I'll sell them to you for $8 a case." I'm like, "Let me taste them." I tasted them. I buy like 10 cases, just they were that's the only one time I've had Australian mangoes and they
Oh,
are just, and I've had them straight off the tree in Costa Rica.
oh
Australian
wow.
mangoes, still the best.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I,
Um,
I'm
so I'm
biased. I
sorry that
agree.
we have some good ones. I mean, we have some great ones here. Australian mangoes are like a 12 on the 110 scale, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, so with that out of the way, what does Dr. Ben eat in a typical day? Um,
Yes.
so obviously I got to stick with what's in season right now. It's like,
Mhm.
it's early October. The mangoes are kind of going away. So I'm eating a lot of them because I could go to the store now and they could be gone, like it's
Yeah.
really like the end. Um, but typically for breakfast, I have some kind of high water fruit, usually like one ingredient at a time. So I will cut up, like, 5, 6 mangoes and eat them. That's it for breakfast.
Mhm.
Um, for lunch, typically do a big green smoothie like you see in the,
Oh.
so then that's great, especially like if you work an office job or you're on the go. It's hard, like
Mhm.
you just pack the smoothie in a container, you make it the morning of, the night before, and then like, you don't have to worry about like prepping and all that. Like it's easy, right?
Yeah.
Then like, you know, so the smoothie's big. Literally big. Like I make a big 64-ounce smoothie. I weigh about 180 pounds, so I eat a lot of food, right? And fruits and vegetables are, nutrient dense, calorie poor. So you got to eat a lot.
Mhm.
Like this is like a half gallon of smoothie. Okay. It's like, and that's like 1,000 calories. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and so somebody smaller might need to eat less. People are like, "Oh my God, you eat so much food." It's like, yeah, well, it's like fruits and vegetables have less calories. You got to eat more of them. But yeah, I do eat a lot.
Mhm.
Um, that green smoothie usually has bananas, like leafy greens like lettuce or kale or spinach or celery, and then usually one other ingredient like blueberries or strawberries or mangoes or something like that. And
Yeah.
water is the base,
Mhm.
really simple. Okay. 3 ingredients, right? Breakfast has 1 ingredient. And so a high water fruit, in December, January might be like oranges, or like homemade orange juice. It just depends on what's in season. And then for dinner, I usually do a salad, usually make the dressing out of other fruits and vegetables. Like last night I blended, I got all the seeds out of a pomegranate and blended with some avocado, made this like pink goop. That was amazing. Just pour that over the vegetables. And then I do include some cooked vegetables, usually like baked or steamed, like baked potatoes or steamed greens or sweet potatoes, or like root vegetables. Usually, but that's the game. And sometimes there might be, I only eat, 4 or 5 different ingredients in a day. Keep it really simple.
Yeah.
So it's never like, it doesn't have to be super gourmet where you're like in the kitchen and you're making all this stuff. It's like, fruits and vegetables were like, they don't need a lot of preparation. Like they're ready to go,
Yeah. And I was reading your guide earlier, and you were talking about what our fur ancestors eat, the monkeys.
Yes.
And what did you refer to them as? I forgot the term now. And
Frugivores.
that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Explain that for people who have never heard that before.
Thanks for asking this question. This is an important distinction.
It
Because
is.
most people think that there's like 3 taxonomies of animals, right? You got the herbivores, you got the carnivores, and you got the omnivores, right? And so, people will say, oh, well, we're omnivores. We eat everything, right? And the vegetarians and the vegans will say, no, we're herbivores, right? They're actually both wrong. Okay. There's a 4th taxonomy, and I'll explain that, with people think we're herbivores. No, herbivores eat grass. They eat grass, and they have long heads such that they can put down and like eat grass, but their eyes are here so they can see if anybody's coming at them. Okay. That's not us. So then the pro-meat people will say, well, you're wrong. Herbivores aren't horses and donkeys. We don't eat grass. Right. And the vegetarians and vegans, we're not carnivores. We don't eat meat. It's like, they're both right about this. We're not either of those things. We are a 4th taxonomy called a frugivore. Okay. Frugivores are like chimpanzees and bonobos, our closest ancestors. They eat primarily fruit and a little bit of leafy greens and a little bit of bugs. Okay. I don't really recommend the bugs. I think you go without the bugs. And so if you look at them, like we have 98% the same DNA as the chimpanzees and bonobos. Our teeth are the same structure. Our digestive tract is the similar structure. We have color vision to see fruit on a tree. Carnivores are most like dogs see in black and white, right? Like carnivores and omnivores, like they generally have like claws to kill animals, right? We've got these hands with a thing called a thumb, so we could grip stuff and like climb trees, right? And so just like the apes and bonobos. So DNA wise, taxonomy wise, physiology, we're the closest related to them, and they eat fruit as their primary staple. They don't eat grass. They don't eat meat. Okay, if they're, if fruit is scarce and there's nothing, will they go and like, kill a smaller animal to eat it to get by? Yes, they will, right? But like their preferred diet is fruit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they want. I always make this joke and laugh with my husband because when we're having problems with fruit flies, like earlier this year, I think it was, we had a fruit fly problem here in the valley. And so I'd leave fruit out, but then it'd be attacked by fruit flies. And he's like, oh, yeah, a little bit of insects won't hurt you. And so we made this joke, and I'm like, I'm not really interested in eating insects, but I just wanted my salad. And, sometimes I'll make a big salad, but I won't eat it all in one go. Because I'll make a huge one and I'll have a little bit and then, wait till I'm kind of, 80, 90% full. Then I might go back later when I'm feeling snacky and finish off the salad. So I'm trying to not overload my digestive system. But yeah, it's funny about the insects. So I like that we can eat fruit, and that's our closest ancestors, and that we don't have to eat the insects.
Like 1 to 2% of their diet is bugs. It's not like,
Yeah, it's not
like,
huge.
if they can find them and they can get them, they'll do it. But yeah.
Yeah, if they can like stick their tongue out and attached to some. But and then the reason why, so you're talking about earlier the digestive system, right? That tube that's running through us. What the food that we eat can either be harmful to us or it can be beneficial to us. And you have to find that works out for you. I know I get a food sensitivity test done as well. It makes me sad when my recent one, like my last two, are saying no to mushrooms. So I can no longer eat mushrooms. And that makes me really sad. So the reason why you're talking about just having that one, type of fruit in the morning, and I think people really need to understand that connection with why that is with the digestive system, how much easier it is for us to process. Because you've also talked about the parasympathetic nerve and
Mhm.
where our energy is going.
Sure. Yeah. So the question is, why is eating one ingredient such a good idea for digestion?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is an important point, right? Because first off, if we go back to nature, what the other animals do in nature, like we're the only one that really buys into this idea of ingredients, right? That we gather a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit, and we make a meal out of a bunch of ingredients, right?
Mhm.
Whereas any other animal in nature, whether it's like a lion killing other animals, like they kill the one thing and then they eat it. They're not like, well, I got a zebra and I'm gonna drag that over to where I also killed this caribou, and then I'm gonna kind of like make like a cool mix of like zebra and caribou meat to eat. No, they don't do that, right? Just in the same way that the ape's not gonna really go, okay, I picked a few off the mango tree. Now I'm gonna go pick a few off the banana tree, and then I'm gonna like eat this. No, they don't do that,
Yeah,
right?
they gotta make a fruit salad.
And so the body is used to eating one thing at a time. Okay.
Mm.
Think of it this way. If you've got a job and your boss is like, okay, here's a list of like, 20 things you got to do, by 10 a.m. today, you're like, oh my God. Right. But if he's like, hey, this is your one project, just focus on this,
Mhm.
which is easier, right? Just focusing on the one thing, right? Because when you digest a food, your body's got to like determine what it is, right? And then secrete a specific set of enzymes and digestive fluids to digest that, right? But if it's a combination of a bunch of things, you get confused, right? But if it's one thing it has to do, it's just much, much more efficient on that. So it can
Mhm.
digest it, it can assimilate it better, and it can burn it more efficiently for energy, and it can get the nutrients out of it better, right? Not to say, oh, you should eat everything one ingredient at a time and never make recipes or never combine anything, but like it's going to make the more you can do that, the easier it's going to make it in your digestive system. So, um, like it's for anybody with digestive issues, the simpler, the fewer ingredients you can make the meals, the easier time your stomach's going to have.
Yeah. And then where does the parasympathetic nerve play into with all of this, with the digestive system and that being, because I know stress is is a main trigger for autoimmune.
Yes.
I think that's how I got triggered. I had moved to America. So while I was in Australia, I grew up in the country. I was all happy. I moved to America. My husband brought home a virus from work. I knew he was sick, so I got onto every single high vitamin C immune boosting supplement I had in the house. It I didn't get the virus, it bypassed me, but my body still had to release it, so I had a post-viral rash all over my body, and again, nobody could tell me what that was. I actually had to go back to Australia to find out what that was, but then from there, just a series of this health journey, and it was just adding the layers of stress onto me. So what happens with stress and the parasympathetic nerve?
Sure. And so this is something I want to do a justice and like if we're running out of time or anything like that, let me know. But so you have this nervous system, right? And it has the fight or flight or sympathetic, right? That's when you're stressed out. That's when something traumatic happens. That's when the car in front of you like screeches to a stop and you got to hit the brakes. Like that's the sympathetic fight or flight kicking in. And then you have the parasympathetic, which is like the rest and digest, the relax, the heal, right? And in our modern world, just with like technology and we got commuting and we got pollution and we got, now we're like an election season, like things are pretty
Mm,
stressful, right? And so we
Yeah.
get into this like chronic fight or flight state, this defense mode. And so both of these states, the sympathetic fight or flight and the parasympathetic rest and digest, they turn certain levers in the body. They make some things work more, other things work less, right? So it's like, okay, we're in danger. Okay, we're going to make the heart pump faster. We're going to make the eyes dilate. We're going to, just make it easier to fight or run away, right? And so that takes a lot of energy. So we are going to downregulate other things that aren't as mission critical, right? Like if you got to run away from a bear, you don't need to be digesting your food. You don't need to be fighting off an infection. You got to get away, right? And so the body will temporarily downregulate digestion and immunity and a few other functions so that it can fight and run away, right? But if we're stuck in this mode all the time, because life is stressful, our job is stressful, or our kids are stressful, like we don't have really a strategy to mitigate that with like, whatever it is, exercise, meditation, take your pick, yoga, then we get into this place where our digestion's always downregulated and our immune system's always downregulated, right? Just because our body's trying to just keep us from getting killed into what it interprets as a threat. So if we could shift out of that and get into mindfulness to, and like I said, take your pick with modalities, whether it's yoga, meditation, breath work, cold plunging, exercise, chanting, sing, whatever it is, right? Like we can actually take the, stop, we can upregulate digestion and immunity and get those things working again, right? But like you may have noticed, if you eat when you're stressed, your stomach can hurt, right? And I've heard this story many times. It's like, this is when people's autoimmune disease often first comes on or flares when they go through a really stressful life event, like, moving to the other side of the world, losing a job, losing a loved one, going through a breakup, graduating from school, whatever it is, right? Like that's so stressful in a system that people's autoimmune condition, either that's when it starts or that's when it like flares way worse. Or maybe they had one condition and it was kind of under control and then something stressful happened and now they got two or three, and they're like, how did you go from one autoimmune disease to two or three? So the more we can do things like meditation and breath work and getting enough sleep is probably a hugely overlooked one, right? Because the body needs rest to heal, right? Then we can begin to see an improvement in our digestion, improvement in our immunity, as we're able to like mitigate the stress we experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Two simple things that we don't do enough of: sleep and be hydrated.
Yeah. Especially living in the desert.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been such a great conversation, Ben. There's 100 more things I want to talk to you about, but we
Sure.
are running out of time. And so I really do want to make sure people know how to connect with you and get help and support through this, because you go to the doctor and they're like, take this medication. For me, for Hashimoto's, take this medication. It makes the T3 talk to the T4 to produce this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but like, why is that happening to begin with? I'm always that, what's going on? What's the underlying thing? And how can I solve this with diet, lifestyle, my food, all the things? And so, for starters, you do live and virtual workshops to help people, and where you're going to deep dive more into the conversation that we have. I believe you hold your virtual ones monthly.
Yep. Yep. I don't have one for October, but yeah, if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, it's just my name, Dr. Benjamin Benulis. We promote it on there.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then also, people can download a free guide. You have the Autoimmune Recovery Blueprint, which I have read, and definitely get his guide. That is a great starting point to really start to wrap your head around how to get into this. And we'll pop all these links in the description. And then you do coaching as well.
Yes. Yeah. So there's the autoimmune recovery blueprint. If you're like, man, I'm just trying to get started, right? Like, what do I do? Like, it's like a 5-page guide of like, here's the basics, right? Like,
Mhm.
but yeah, I do coaching. If you go on my website or you go on my my Instagram. You can like put in an inquiry about that. If you feel like you really need like one-on-one support. The initial call is to see if your fit is free.
Yeah. And so I definitely recommend start with Dr. Ben. Like that would be my advice to people. If you are going through autoimmune condition and you are getting the runaround with doctors and you're not sure what to do, you have the free guide that people can download that we just mentioned. They can book a call with you, which knowing you would be a no obligation call just for them to get an understanding on what it would entail to work with you. And just start there, because if you could see my mom and how she was angry to the day she died being on that medication, and then the side effects I witnessed her go through and that she struggled with, that is not a life I want for anybody. And that was the whole reason to create this podcast, get the message out, promote people like Dr. Ben who are genuinely helping people who have walked this life before, know what it's like. Do you have any parting words for our guests today, Dr. Ben?
My parting words would be start somewhere, be intentional. Don't say, oh yeah, next month, next year, next Monday. It's like,
Mm.
how many times have you kicked the can down the road like that? Start today. Go to the grocery store, go to the produce section, find what just looks appealing, grab a bunch of it, and get started today. You're never going to know. You don't need to know everything before you get started. You're going to have to figure it out along the way. You're going to make mistakes. So just start now.
Oh my God, you're going to make so many mistakes.
Oh
I
my
can't
gosh, you
even.
can't make more mistakes than I did. I mean, that's why I wrote books, so people won't have to make the same ones as I
Oh,
did.
the amount of mistakes we made were countless. And then you go through different seasons, right? Especially when you're a woman. Like in my 20s, it wasn't until I was 29 till I started to heal myself through food and diet. And then by my mid-30s, I thought I had this all figured out. And I'm like, I am good. And then I went from being on the paleo diet, transitioning to a plant. Well, I'm going to be honest. I went from being paleo to vegetarian to a junk food vegan and moved to America at the same time. And then having to transition to plant-based. So, and then now I'm 41. And so now my body is changing again. So you're going to constantly go through different processes, but don't give up. Start somewhere. Know you're going to make mistakes, but know you have people like Dr. Ben in your corner that will help support you through different life transitions as well.
Awesome.
I think that's really great. Thank you so much, Dr. Van. I am so honored that you were able to take time out to do this interview today. I love watching your Instagram. Everybody, if you're not following Dr. Van on Instagram, go do that immediately. Go find his mango video and be inspired. Go to the grocery store, go buy a whole bag of fruit. What's your favorite fruit right now? Mangoes are about to
Yeah,
go
those
out of
cute
season.
mangoes are kind of, you know, might not be in the stores much longer. I still got a bunch of them at home, but the cotton candy grapes right now are really great,
Oh.
and then the pomegranates are really coming in, which are even though they're a lot of work, I love them.
Okay, so that's if you're in North America. If you're in Australia, and like we mentioned, Dr. Ben does virtual calls, so you can work with him no matter where you are. And if you're in Australia, you are coming into mango season soon. So go have a mango for me. I'm going to be flying home this summer purely for mangoes. I mean, I tell my friends and family it's to see them, but it's really, I want a mango and lychee fix. Um, but thank you so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure to chat with you, and to all of our audience, stay well and go eat some fruit. Thank you for joining us on the show today. If you like this episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode.